Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about a very interesting transition that is currently occurring within the car market that is basically making it flip in the opposite direction of what we have been seeing over the last few months. But before we dive into this video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. We're going to start things off by going over some data that was released by TrueCar. If you've never heard of TrueCar, they're basically an online car buying platform that'll show you what other people have paid for both new and used vehicles, and they basically claim that they can get you the lowest price on a vehicle and just make your buying experience super simple because they work with dealers to just, again, give you that low upfront pricing. Now, since TrueCar is obviously showing people the data of what other people paid for cars, that means they have to do a lot of data collection, which means that they release reports on what's happening within the market based on all of their data collection, and it's pretty fascinating. So the first piece of data is the amount of sales made in January of 2023. Sales are up by 6.5% in January of 2023 compared to January of 2022. So that means that this January was much better than last January. However, sales are down by about 6.6% in January of 23 compared to December of 22, which makes sense because December is always a big sales month and January is always a slimmer sales month. And so this data supports the fact that it looks like we're kind of pushing more towards a quote-unquote normalized car market. Now, the thing that's really crazy is fleet sales. So in January of 2023, fleet sales were up by 74% compared to January of 2022, and they were up by 13% compared to December of 2022. So this just shows the continual ramp up of fleet sales. And I can tell you anecdotally, the dealers that I film for that will basically do these courtesy deliveries for the fleet sales have so much more inventory than I have seen over the course of the entire pandemic. Like, fleet sales are seriously ramping up quite a bit. Now, the next bit of information is in regards to transaction prices. In January of 2023, the average transaction price on a brand new car was up by 3% compared to January of 2022. However, it was down by 2% compared to December of 2022. So what this means is that the average brand new car a year later is 3% more expensive than what it was a year ago, but prices are coming down from where they were at compared to just a month ago, which is very interesting. And so with all of this taken into account, this data shows that we are expected to sell 7% more cars in the 2023 sales year compared to the 2022 sales year, so about 16 million new units, which is really solid. However, the next piece of data that's interesting is used vehicle sales. In 2023, they were down by January 2023, they're down by about 21%. So new vehicle sales are up, used vehicle sales are down. And this frankly makes a lot of sense with the trend that we've been seeing lately where people are pulling back from the used car market because used car prices are just so high. And with new car dealers willing to discount the new car inventory, there's a lot of vehicles that you can buy for less money new than you could buy for used. And so the one thing that is weird about this situation is, I've talked about this over the course of a couple videos, used car prices declined a little bit in January, but not by a lot. And so it's a weird market, but less people are buying used cars right now. Now, the next piece of information that's really important is interest rates. So in December, the average interest rate was 6.7% for a new car, whereas in January, 6.9%. And then the average on a used vehicle, 10%, which is just crazy. Again, that's average. Now, in terms of loan term, January of 2023, 69 months for a new vehicle and then 70 months for a used vehicle. So people are taking out longer loans on used cars than new cars, which in my opinion doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because with a used car, you're either going to have no warranty or substantially less warranty compared to a new car. And if you take out a longer loan on something like that, like the chances of you having something break on the car while you're still making payments on it are exponentially higher, but that's just what people are doing in the market. So I know that this was a lot of data to go through, but it shows some very interesting trends for the car market and kind of a little bit of a flip in the car market. First off, fleet sales are up by a large margin, which means that companies are again purchasing vehicles, which is going to boost the overall new car sales number, which is great for manufacturers. And for us regular folks, it's like who cares, right? Unless those extra profits help subsidize, lower costs with the regular vehicles, then I'm all about it. But anyways, new car sales in general are up, but used car sales are down by a very large margin. And again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out why this is happening. When you have a used car interest rate that is quite a bit higher than the new car interest rate, well, borrowing money on used cars is more expensive than borrowing money on new cars. And then on top of that, used car prices need to come down more because they haven't come down enough. There are so many brand new cars that you can buy for substantially less money than what you could buy pay for on a used one. A good example is actually my friend today bought a brand new Subaru WRX. So with how his WRX was equipped, he basically was able to negotiate a deal on it to get it at around $33,000. Well, if he wanted to buy his exact same car on the used market today, he would have had to have paid anywhere between $34,000 to $36,000 depending on where he purchased it at. So he got a brand new car for less money than what he would have paid on that car used, and obviously he got a significantly lower interest rate because he bought new versus used. And this trend is going to continue, and more people are realizing this. And so again, this will just kind of put more and more downward pressure on those used car prices, even though the data currently does not support used car prices going down because January was a pretty flat month. I think that February and March will show a lot more promising data with those used car prices coming down. And then the last key piece of data was that interest rate data with, how high interest rates are currently on both new and used cars, and then how long loan terms are. And so again, with that interest rate data, it shows that buying a new car is way more preferential to buying a used car because, well, loan terms are about the same length, but interest rates are significantly lower on new cars. And this is where I want to talk about the Federal Reserve because, again, they just had a meeting where they raised interest rates by 25 basis points. And they've kind of been pulling back on their rate hikes recently, right? They had the 75 basis point rate hikes just a few months ago, and now we're having 25 basis point rate hikes. And so a lot of consumers are starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the current situation we're in. Yes, interest rates are significantly higher today than they were yesterday, but they're somewhat stabilized. And so something that you need to understand is that an interest rate is only quote unquote high if it just recently increased. But if interest rates are, more stable, then people just get used to the higher interest rates. And that is what we're somewhat starting to see in the market. And again, the data is supporting this. More people are going and buying cars, and more people are going and taking out loans on these cars that they are buying. And I think a big part of that is because they just believe that, yeah, interest rates are, higher, but this is just the new normal with interest rates, and it doesn't look like they're going to be going any higher from this point. And so it's like, this is just what I have to do. If I want to buy a car, I've got to pay this rate on it. And before we cap off this video, I want to go over something that's a little bit more on the anecdotal side of things. So over the last few weeks, I've noticed this huge ramp up in the number of customers that are going in and buying cars at dealers that I film with. So just a few months ago, it was, pretty much just like a wasteland at dealerships. Like there just weren't any customers. And even if I went in on a weekend, the chances of me running into a customer, it just didn't usually happen. Whereas especially over the last week, it's insane how many customers there are. There are so many times where I'll go into a dealership and I can't even find a parking space because there are so many customers that all the parking spaces are taken. And on top of that, I'm talking to the dealers and they're like, yeah, we're doing all these car deals. And it's they're coming out of nowhere. It's they went from, it's not like they weren't selling any cars. They were still selling cars, but they went from selling a certain amount of cars to now they're selling way more cars. And I'm like, well, what do you think has changed? And what dealers are telling me is that, again, people are kind of accepting the market that we're in, and they're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable because, again, the Federal Reserve has pulled back. They are no longer giving us, huge 75 basis point rate hikes. We just got 25, and so people are like, okay, well, it looks like inflation is, starting to come down. It looks like the Federal Reserve is starting to pull back on the interest rate hikes. So I think the economy is in a pretty good state, and so it's probably time to go and buy a car. And again, this is what I am seeing on the ground when I go to dealerships. And so, I'm just going to say this right now, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong at the end of the sales month of February, but I think that February is going to be a really strong sales month for dealers. I think that new car sales are for sure going to be up February compared to January, even though February is a shorter sales month. Again, we only have 28 days in February versus 31 in January. And then, on top of that, I think that used car sales, although they're still probably going to be in the red compared to February of 2022, I think that there are going to be more used car sales in February of 23 compared to January of 23, because I think there's going to be, some downward pressure on prices where, there might be some deals where it makes sense for someone to buy used over new because of the price difference. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up. But the market, it's changing, and it's changing a lot faster than I expected. I want you guys to let me know what you think about this. I'll see ya.